Alright, everybody, welcome back to Major Gaming, and today we're going to be talking about Dead by Daylight, and we're going to be talking about how I would rework the deep wound effect in Dead by Daylight. So in Dead by Daylight, there are a couple killers that apply deep wounds base kit, and with the recent changes to MFT and the fact that deep wounds is kind of an annoying effect, I feel like killers that have deep wound are hard to buff because they can't be too strong, because then they just become extremely annoying to go against. And I think that's a problem, and that's why I think that killers shouldn't have anything that applies the deep wound effect base kit. Maybe add-ons, maybe it should still stick with perks, add-ons maybe at most, and just it should really be more of the survivors choice to get that deep wound effect, if that makes sense. Not necessarily choice, but say a survivor is running a perk, the negative of that perk should be deep wounds instead of the killer applying deep wounds themselves. Deep wounds should be a negative on the survivor side, not a positive on the killer side, if that makes sense. Because then it's hard to buff a character that's so annoying to go against base kit, because you can't make them stronger, like what we're going to talk about today, Legion. How are you going to buff Legion without making him extremely annoying to go against? They already are a mending simulator while also being a weak killer. So if you make them stronger, it's only gonna make the mending simulator worse. It's only gonna make them more hated, So in our reality, deep wounds shouldn't be in their base kit. The deep wounds should be, removed and then replaced with something else that's less annoying but potentially stronger, because strength doesn't necessarily mean annoying. There can be weak things that are annoying to deal with, and Legion is one of those. Legion is, and to an extent, Skull Merchant, because Skull Merchant now isn't strong. She just is kind of annoying sometimes. And that's the worst spot to be in, when you're weak but annoying. So you can't be buffed, but you're also too weak to actually make a huge impact. It's annoying. So, yeah, I think that is, I think removing deep wounds from the base kit of these killers that I'm going to talk about and replacing it with something else would improve the overall health of these killers and allow for them to be buffed without it being super annoying. So the first killer we're going to talk about is Skull Merchant. She's the one that most recently got a rework, and the thing with Skull Merchant is she just applies a ton of shit. She has so many status effects going on, which, not gonna lie, I kind of like, because she's different. It makes her different, she just has so much going on. It's kind of cool to think about, and she's supposed to be this technology-based killer, and usually that means it's more of a brain game instead of a physical game. So I kind of like that there's more to think about with her base kit. But some could say there's a little bit too much. So I think removing deep wounds from her base kit would make her a little bit easier to figure out how to go against, and then also make her buffable so that she could be a little bit stronger. I don't think she's weak now. She's probably the strongest out of the three we're gonna. Actually, no, second strongest out of the three we're gonna talk about. But she could use a little bit of a buff. So you nerf and buff at the same time. So going down my list of ideas here. Oh, this is my idea, pretty much. Remove deep wounds from her base kit. Getting scanned while injured no longer removes claw traps. So, right now, as Skull Merchant is, if you're playing against Skull Merchant and you have a claw trap on you, to my understanding, what happens is if you get scanned again with the claw trap is removed, and then you get a bunch of effects put on you. I don't think that's, I think that's a little too many steps. So if you remove the deep wound, and then remove that aspect, that's less going on. So you don't have to worry about mending against the Skull Merchant if you get scanned while injured, which is in-game slowdown that is taken away from her. So it is a nerf. Even if it's a little bit of slowdown, it's still slowdown being taken from her. So now what we need to do is buff her chase a little bit, because now she doesn't have that slowdown. Now, when an injured survivor is scanned with an active claw trap, they receive a new claw trap instead of their claw trap being broken off and then nothing happening. They receive a new claw trap. And then they also receive a 10% movement speed penalty for 8 seconds instead of 6 seconds. Right now, in-game, it's 6 seconds. You buff that penalty up by 2 seconds, maybe 1 second, I'm not sure. But just buff it a little bit so that they stay hindered for a little bit longer. Killer Instinct, revealing them for 4 seconds. I believe it's 3 seconds right now. I forgot to write that down, but I believe it's 3 seconds right now. Buff it up to 4 seconds. You get the Killer Instinct. And the broken status effect until the claw trap is automatically removed after 60 seconds. So as long as you have a claw trap on you, you're broken, you can't heal, and you have the hindered effect and the Killer Instinct effect, but no deep wounds. So if you get away, you don't have to worry about healing at all, because you can't heal for 60 seconds, but you also don't have to worry about the deep wound. You don't have to worry about mending that, you just get away, And that could add up, a good amount of time for a survivor, but it's harder to get away now. The Skull Merchant is a little bit stronger in chase once that happens. Now, when you are scanned with a claw trap and receive a new claw trap, all of that happens, and then the 60-second timer resets. So, if the more you get scanned while you're injured, the longer it'll be before you can heal. So that pushes you to want to not get scanned, because if you do, you'll just be injured forever, or until, the Skull Merchant hits you. Or not forever, but, for a while, until either you get out of chase or the Skull Merchant hits you before that 60 seconds is up, because the timer will reset every time. And that pushes the Skull Merchant to want to get more scans, because that keeps the survivor injured longer, where they can't heal. It gives them more of a chance to catch up, and, because also, as per base kit right now, Skull Merchant gains a 5% movement speed boost for every active claw trap. If the claw traps are replenishing, that 5% speed boost isn't going away. So, she's faster, on a more regular basis, making her chase a little bit stronger, while getting rid of an annoying part of her base kit. So that's and then obviously as per base kit right now, survivors with a claw trap can be tracked on a radar. So I think that would make it a little bit better for going against Skull Merchant. That's one less effect you have to worry about. That's one less thing you have to think about when you're going against her. And then you give her a little bit more chase power, so it's a little bit less thinking and more regular, survivor counterplay where you're in chase and you're, doing your normal survivor stuff. So that's my idea on how to change deep wounds when it comes to Skull Merchant. Now, we move on to the next guy, Deathslinger. Deathslinger is going to be a little bit simpler, obviously, because of all the characters that apply deep wound base kit, he doesn't really get affected by it too much. He doesn't apply it consistently as much as the others. He still does, obviously, but it's not as complicated as a Skull Merchant or a Legion if you remove it. So, and Deathslinger is the strongest one on this list, so he doesn't need as many buffs as a Skull Merchant would if you remove the deep wounds. So with Deathslinger, I say remove deep wounds. Spearing a healthy survivor but not hitting them only injures the survivor. So right now, if you spear a survivor with your gun and you don't end up hitting them, then they still get the deep wounds regardless. No matter what, if they are speared, they get deep wounds. Now, you remove deep wounds, and then spearing but not hitting a survivor, all it does is injure them. Now, I want to reward Deathslinger players for actually reeling in and hitting the survivor, taking the time to do that. So, what do I want to do? Reeling in and hitting a healthy survivor applies the broken and oblivious status effects for 60 seconds. It also gives Deathslinger a 5% haste effect for 10 seconds after hitting the survivor. So he gets, instead of punishing the survivor, the Deathslinger gets rewarded for actually reeling in, taking the time to reel in and hit the survivor. It still doesn't down, but it gives the Deathslinger some sort of reward. Since he's losing that slowdown for, deep wound, survivors having to heal themselves, he needs to be able to be a little bit stronger in chase. How do you do that? You make sure the survivors aren't able to heal as much with the broken effect. He's more of a surprise killer or a jump scare killer, because he'll have the oblivious status effect for 60 seconds. So while you're injured, you can't heal, and you also can't tell when he's coming. So that actually adds more of a fear factor to him, because you don't know you can't tell when he's coming, and you can't heal either. So if you're sitting on a gen just waiting out the time until you can heal, and you don't know he's coming, he could sneak up and just boom, and get you again, and then actually down you. So yeah, that's I feel like that would buff Deathslinger, but also remove the deep wounds, which is, more of an annoying effect. And then you also give him a 5% haste effect for 10 seconds so that he can then catch up, because now that survivor, once that survivor gets away, they don't have to deal with mending. They don't have to mend. They don't have to do anything, so they could just hop on a gen. So you need the Deathslinger to be able to then keep up so that the survivor doesn't get away. So you give him a little bit of haste after he gets a hit like that, because he just spent that time reeling the survivor in to hit them. Now he needs a slight reward, a small reward, and that reward is the haste effect, so that he hits them, The haste effect activates, and then he gets a small head start on getting back into chase after doing that. I feel, and remind you that Deathslinger is a 110 killer. He's not 115, so him getting that 5% haste effect is literally him just becoming a normal speed killer for a couple seconds. So he's not gonna be crazy fast. He's not even gonna be faster than Trickster, who is also a ranged killer. He's still gonna be 115 with that haste effect. He'll be a normal killer for a couple seconds, so maybe he could get an M1 in or something, That's, he's not actually going to be faster than, a lot of the other killers in the game. He's still a 110 killer. So, that's my thoughts on Deathslinger. Pretty simple changes to remove the deep wounds and make them less of a base kit function. Now, the big guy. Legion. So, Legion is the worst culprit of, deep wound annoyingness. He can apply deep wound extremely easily. And he's not strong. They are not a strong character. They're just so annoying to go against. So, remove deep wounds from Legion. That slowdown that he gets from deep wounds gone. Now, that makes him weaker, because a big part of his base kit is applying deep wounds to slow survivors down and not have them work on gens as fast. So what do you give to compensate for that nerf? Feral Frenzy hits on injured survivors apply a 10% movement speed penalty for 6 seconds. So, you're in Feral Frenzy, you see an injured survivor, that's your first hit. That first hit, it applies hinder to that survivor for 6 seconds, a 10% hinder. Now, you can move on to the other survivors, or you knock yourself out of your power, take that cooldown, and then chase after them as a M1 killer while they're just getting over their hindered effect. So now you actually have a chance as just an M1 killer to catch up and hit them. And they're not deep wounded. They don't have to if they get away, they can heal back to healthy, no problem. And with this change, you actually can heal against Legion, and it's not a bad idea. Because right now as Legion, it's like Plague, but you either stay injured and risk getting M1'd against an M1 killer, or you heal, and then he just hits you again. And then you're back to injured in 2 seconds. So, now, with removing the deep wounds, you actually have time and you can think, oh, maybe I can heal now. Because now, you have less time healing. And then we're also going to go over that Feral Frenzy will now down the 4th survivor hit instead of the 5th survivor, if that survivor is already injured. So, say you got all 4 survivors injured, hit one, hit one, hit one. Instead of, you're not applying deep wound to any of them, so you're really not getting a whole lot of value out of it. But the 4th survivor you hit, you down. So it's quicker to get those downs with Feral Frenzy. Because you're not, unfortunately, in this, rework, you're not applying deep wound. So when you go 1, 2, 3, those survivors are getting a hindered effect, but nothing's happening to them other than that. So you can, if you want to continue to do that, it has to be a little bit easier to get that Feral Frenzy down, because otherwise you're just wasting time. If it was still 5 hits, what's the point? All you did was hinder 4 survivors and then get a 5th hit. and you got very little value out of doing that. The hindered isn't for consecutive hits. The hindered is for if you hit a survivor, come out of your power, and then go after them with the M1, not consistent hits with the Feral Frenzy to down a survivor. So now the fourth survivor, if injured, will go down. And that also gives you a little more to think about with Legion, because if you have 3 survivors injured and 1 healthy, you don't want to hit 3 survivors that are already injured and then hit the healthy one and then get nothing out of it. So you actually need to think. You're like, all right, I have 2 injured survivors and 2 healthy ones. I need to make sure I'm going after the 2 healthy ones first, hit them, hit an injured, and then get the 4th down. You know, it's a little bit more to think about. He's not as brain dead as he is now, where you just stab all game without even thinking about it. It doesn't matter, you know. And it adds a little bit of something to him. And then also Feral Frenzy goes on a cooldown 1 second faster. So once you're out of your power, whether you do it on purpose or not, you cool down faster. You can get back to M1ing quicker after your Feral Frenzy ends. I feel like that's, you know, and that also helps with the whole hindered thing. Say you stab a survivor, that survivor is hindered, come out of your power. Now that survivor is hindered for 6 seconds. I'm not sure how long the cooldown is for Legion's Feral Frenzy now, but I can't assume it's more than 3 seconds, because it doesn't feel that long. I think it's like 3 seconds. So if you take a second away, it's 2 seconds. That leaves you 4 seconds of the survivor being hindered, where you can chase them as an M1 killer. And then maybe you can increase the 6 seconds of hindered to 8 seconds and give the Legion a little more time. But with this change, at least you can think about buffing that without the problem of deep wounds being extremely annoying to go against, you know? Like, these numbers can be buffed, but they can't be buffed as long as he's a mending simulator, you know? And then also add 2 seconds of frenzy time between hits. So I think say you hit a survivor, and then you hit another survivor. Every time you hit a survivor, you get like more and more time. Whatever the time is between hits, add 2 extra seconds. Because now that you're not applying slowdown with the Feral Frenzy, you should be able to get more hits out consistently. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not causing a massive effect with your hits, so you can do the hits more, keep survivors injured more, and then, you know, it's not a big deal if it's a little bit easier to get those hits, because if they're already injured, you get some hindered that you might not want or might not care about. You might not get any value out of until you hit that 4th person. And that's another thing that I actually just thought about. Hindering the survivors after they get injured would make it harder for them to body block another survivor. So getting that 4th down would actually be a little bit easier. So you do get some value out of the hinder, because say you injure a survivor, the 3rd survivor, you hit them while they're injured, and they get that hindered effect, and then their teammate is right over there, you would think, oh, they would try to body block. Well, now they're hindered. They might not reach it in time for you to go hit them. The 4th teammate, you get that down on that injured survivor, and then you come out of your power, and then the hindered survivor that you just hit is now getting there. M1, you know? That might give you some value. Won't give you value all the time, obviously, but that situation, I can see the hindered giving you value. But yeah, so that is my changes to Deep Wound. I think these three killers are the only ones that apply Deep Wound with their base kit. I don't remember any other killer that. Oh, the Knight with his guard. There is one guard that applies Deep Wound. That's annoying. Alright. That guard with the Knight, I forgot about the Knight. He's been disabled, so I completely forgot about him. Yeah, there is a guard, not one of Knight's guards that applies Deep Wound. Alright. I'm gonna come up with something on the spot for that. That guard obviously would no longer apply Deep Wound. What does he do instead? I'd say he applies the broken status effect for 60 seconds. I know it's kind of similar to everything else, but I don't think like the Knight does apply Deep Wound, base kit, but it doesn't. It's not a common thing. That's why I keep forgetting about it, and it's out of the Knight's control. So I do think it should be removed, but I don't think that is something that would cause the Knight to not get any buffs. Not like these three. So I'd say remove the Deep Wound from Knight's Guard and replace it with either a hindered effect, like a 10% hindered for 10 seconds, or broken. Probably hindered, actually. Because if, say, that guard specifically hits a survivor, they're injured and hindered, that makes it easier for the Knight to catch up and knock them down. So yeah, I think a 10% hindered for 3 to 5 seconds on that guard instead of the Deep Wound. That would make Knight a little bit stronger, but he's not gonna. It's one guard, and it's just hindered for a couple seconds, So if the Knight's not there to immediately, get value out of it, it's not gonna do much. So yeah, I'd say, yeah, I forgot about Knight. Bastard. Alright, yeah, so add the Knight in there. My thoughts on the Knight. Completely forgot that was a thing. But yeah, alright, so that'll be it for this video. I hope y'all liked my ideas. If you have any ideas of your own, or if you agree with my ideas, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever. If you don't like the idea, let me know. Yeah, and that'll be it. So everyone have a good day.